I loaned my stepson $300,000 so he can start his own business. Yes, I'm wealthy from real estate, but that's no excuse for what he did next. He pretended he had amnesia from a car accident just so he could get away with not paying me. Then, when I thought I heard it all, he did something I could not believe. My stepson tried to scam me faking amnesia. Around mid-January this year, my 27-year-old stepson came to me asking for a $300,000 loan to jumpstart his IT entrepreneurship. He went through some of the details, nothing too precise, but overall it seemed sound. It wasn't the first time he came to me looking for money, though asking for such a big sum was something new. I'm a retired real estate investor, 59 years old. I've been happily married to his mom for almost 10 years. If I could sum up my relationship with him over the years, I would say it's been distant. We lived under the same roof for around 2 years, and he never seemed to be too fond of me or thought of me as a fatherly figure. I had to scold him for one time for trying to throw loud parties in our house, or using some sort of state properties to hang out with his friends and get drunk. After that, he just went to college, moved out of the house, and received a plentiful allowance, in hopes he would get a degree in finance and accounting. But sadly, he dropped out on the sophomore year. Ever since, he's been tumbling through life, joining pyramid-like businesses and dropping from time to time to offer us monthly subscriptions to catalog products. My wife also seems excited about his new projects, and I'm always hoping for him to finally find something steady and live a nice life, but I guess some people take longer to mature in that aspect. I agreed to lend him the money with no interest. He came up with the monthly payment plan that would begin 3 months after he received the money, and I was on board with it. The first month he sounded really excited, sent me pictures of the offices he was renting. I thought he was finally getting serious. But then he cut off all communication. He went a whole month missing without giving notice to anyone. I reached out to his friends, ex-coworkers, and they did not hear anything about him. Then I finally decided to visit his landlord. He said the last thing he knew was that the doorman from the building saw him leaving with his luggage, seemingly on a trip. He did not ask where. 2 months went by and my calls would not reach him. His number seemed to be disconnected now. I tried to keep my wife out of the issue. I did not want her to get worried. And I had hoped that this time, her son's business with me would end up alright. One day, a mail updated from one of my credit cards popped up in my notifications. Apparently, it was being used in a hotel in Las Vegas. I called the hotel and asked for my stepson, and indeed, he was staying there. I asked him to please transfer the call to his room, and I finally got to talk to him. He sounded kind of nervous. He told me he needed to go all the way over there to have a meeting with some business partners in Nevada, with whom he was planning to set up the entrepreneurship. He lost his phone while traveling and did not have time to get in touch with all of us in the meetings and stuff. I offered to go over there and meet his associates. Perhaps I could be of any help. But he refused and said that hopefully the business will start running in about a month. Almost a month after that, I got a call from the hospital. My stepson was involved in a car accident on the interstate freeway. They found high levels of alcohol in his blood when he arrived. Luckily, no one else was harmed. He went against one of the barriers and put himself into a pretty bad bruise on his head and a traumatism on his leg. I rushed there with my wife, and the first thing I saw was a woman that claimed to be his girlfriend in the waiting room. She told me that their relationship had been going on for a year or so, and that we hadn't got the chance to get to know each other. Then I finally got to see my stepson. As soon as he saw me, he started crying, saying, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I promise I won't drink again." And he hugged me. I was shocked since he never really used to call me dad in such a heartful way. I was moved. He kept going on about how he would get his life together and finish his semester to get his college degree. At the moment, I did not understand what was going on since he had been out of college for years. Then I remember he used to call me dad every time I caught him coming home drunk late at night during his freshman years. We comforted him while the doctors came in and took us outside of the room to explain the situation. He said that apparently the great psychological trauma plus the physical damage he took to the head could have caused him a sudden case of amnesia. They were running tomography scans and exams to take a better look at the case. My wife was devastated. We let him rest the day, and he seemed to be deep in his thoughts and not very talkative. The next day, the doctor helped us explain the situation to him. He asked about college and his life after he dropped out, about his girlfriend, and finally about what he was doing in Las Vegas. The hospital discharged him, and we decided it was better for him to stay at home with us. His girlfriend did not look comfortable with that decision. We offered to stay with us as well, and she accepted. We hoped that returning home would help his mind be at ease and maybe slowly regain his memory. But it seemed to have little to no effect at all. He kept asking what about his old pals and old stories. We tried not to push him too much, and still, every time we tried to remembering therapy the doctor suggested, he would suddenly start having migraines and joint pains. So he would spend most of his days inside his room with his girlfriend, full of medications. Since he was lost for a whole 3 months, I thought it was a good idea to try to pick up where he left off. So, a couple weeks later, without warning, I drove him to his rented apartment, asking him every once in a while if he remembered the neighborhood, where we were driving through, and then his migraines came back. But I tried to convince him to go through with it anyways. We went to his department, none of his keys worked, but the landlord recognized us and opened the door. We went through his house. At one point, he said he needed to go to the bathroom to freshen out, and inadvertently went to the right room in his hallway. "Oh, so you do feel familiar in here," I said.
"Oh, it's working, I'm so glad."
"Sure thing, Dad," he said with a weak smile while locking himself in the bathroom. He left his phone outside and kept receiving message after message. I caught a glimpse of the screen, and they were messages from his girlfriend, asking where he is and such. When he came out, he seemed pretty angry because I was holding his phone. I calmed him down, gave it to him, and apologized. He went outside to take a call and then went back inside. We went through his room, looked at his laptop, personal computer, and nothing. He did not remember any of the passwords he said. I saw some deposit receipts in this garbage bin, but before I could say anything, he stormed out saying he remembered giving his girlfriend the password to his laptop and couldn't even ask about them. We drove back to the house, and my wife and his girlfriend asked us where we've been. I told them, and he started feeling weak and asking to lay down his head. Both of them scolded me and took him to his room. The very next day, I went to the apartment by myself, and the receipts weren't there anymore. That night, I asked my wife, "What if he's faking it?" She did not seem to understand the question, but I explained. She looked at me in the eyes and asked me, "Are you serious about this?" I said that I really hoped I was wrong by having these thoughts. I really hoped he wasn't capable of doing that to us, but I could not stop thinking about it. I told her that every time I tried to ask him about the last few months, he would start getting these said migraines and needing to lay down. That there was no trace of the money I loaned nor the business that he said he started at the beginning of the year. No traces of these partners either. She, in all her right, said to me how selfish of me was thinking about money or making such harsh assumptions while his son was going through such a difficult process. Why couldn't I take his side or put myself in his shoes? At the moment, I thought she was right and blamed myself for being so selfish. One day, I got to talk with his girlfriend. She was up late at night making some tea for herself. I joined her for a cup, and she took the occasion to thank us and being so supportive regarding my stepson's condition. I took the compliment with a little guilt, and she started talking about her relationship with him and about how she met. She told me things about his life during years she's been dating him, about how he was down in the dumps because of recent failed projects. She seemed to understand him well. We agreed that he had a rough time getting his life together. I couldn't help but ask her about the last project, and she started to get evasive, saying she did not know much about it. She said it was getting late and she should probably go to sleep. The next day, I thought that maybe I should investigate the matter on my own, instead of pushing him to deal with this stuff. The first thing that came to my mind was getting a doctor's written statement on his condition that allowed me to review his bank movements and track the money on my own with the help of a bank agent. When I went to pick up his last medical exams, the doctor told me that his head looked nothing but normal. I was relieved with his progress, but then he insisted that there shouldn't be any brain damage keeping him from regaining his memory. That phrase stuck with me. Luckily, I persuaded him to provide me with a document with which I could sustain my request to view his bank information in front of an agent. I went with my accountant to the bank's branch office. Luckily, it was the same in which I kept my savings. The agent understood our situation and did not hesitate to review my stepson's last account movement with us. The shocking news was, almost all the money was gone. I couldn't believe it. All that was left was $75,000. Out of the original $300,000, $50,000 was spent in a single weekend in Las Vegas, in which the accident took place. The rest of the money was wired through an intermediary to a bank account in Panama City. I later hired an investigator and found out the rest of the money was destined to the creation of a shell corp, in which my stepson appeared as the owner and his girlfriend as vice president. The whole thing wrecked me. That week, while going to his room, I overheard a conversation between him and his girl. She was convincing him of going out overseas. She was saying it's what he deserved after all these years. He was reluctant to leave so suddenly, but he seemed to understand where she was going with the plan. Let's just leave. I'll buy the tickets. They'll still think you have amnesia. They'll think it'll do you well. We'll spend a few years abroad and they'll probably forgive and forget. I just took it in. I did not tell my wife. I just deeply thought of the situation. The next day, his girlfriend just packed her stuff and left our house. She told us she needs to visit her family for some urgent matter. My wife wished her the best, and I just watched her go with an awkward smile, knowing that probably she would find herself a ticket and leave the country, waiting for our stepson to do the same. Then, a few days later, I found myself the courage to confront our son. I thought that this could end my marriage, that if things went wrong, I would probably have to start new. But it was the right thing to do. I went to his room and found him packing his stuff. He greeted me and told me he was thinking of taking a little vacation trip to clear his mind and regain his memory more. I asked him if he had any friends in Panama. He stopped what he was doing, and I told him the climate there is pretty hot. Then he would probably have to get used to being tan. He just looked at me like asking, "How do you know?" I told him this. I know about the money, about your expense in Las Vegas, about the shell company. Did you really think we would just forgive and forget? That we could just let it slide and watch you go? Take a seat, while I remained silent with his sight lost in the ground. As soon as he was about to say something, I added this. You want to know what the saddest thing is? The saddest thing is, I would still probably forgive and forget. A tear ran down his cheek while his lips trembled. We probably would have forgiven you and tried to forget it all, because we care about you so damn much. We could not afford to hate you, even if what you've done. We're too busy rooting for you and praying for you to finally get your life together. That doesn't keep it from hurting, though." He just started to cry and then tried to compose himself. He said this, "So my mom already knows." I told him she didn't, and he asked why. I said that still, after all of this, I wanted him to get a chance to make the right choice. When I got into the car, as drunk as I was, he said, I could only think, what if I went back in time where I still had a chance to do the right thing? I wanted to end it all. I did not have the will to go through with this plan to get away with the money you trusted me and betrayed you with. All in all, you and Mom are still my own family. But then, I woke up in the hospital and realized that everything was done. Still, I forced myself to pretend, and when I could not pretend anymore, I found myself trapped between a lie and this hideous thing I was about to do. I told him that no matter in how long of a point he could find himself in life, there was always the chance to take a step in the right direction. The one that leads to a life filled with meaning. He understood that there was no need to run anymore. It was time to face his fears and take the chance with a decent life about worthy people. He desisted of leaving the country and managed to revert the bank transaction between the foreign account of the shell core to his U.S. bank. He returned to me what was left of the money and promised to pay back what he spent through an honest job. I convinced him to join a community college and pursue a career that he could see himself being passionate about. After a little research and trial and error, he found himself comfortable in taking computer programming courses. He left his girlfriend and turned his back on his old acquaintances that clouded his judgment. Recently, he found himself a part-time job at a company that was hiring junior developers. He drops by every weekend for dinner and shares with me his thoughts and experiences, and even asks for my advice from time to time. I even got to meet a few of his new friends, and they're definitely helping to keep him focused on his goals. I believe that. At last, he found himself in a better place in this life. I can just imagine this story going so much different if OP wasn't so smart. What if he did not find out about stepson's plan or about the girlfriend spilling the beans? Let me know what would have happened if he would have never found that out, and I would love to hear your opinion on that. Drop it down in the comment section. Our next story that we're going to look at is an Am I the A-hole story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my sister announce her pregnancy at my wedding, even though I got proposed to at hers? Guys, if you're not subscribed to my second channel, make sure you subscribe. I'll pop it on screen now. I do daily videos on both channels, so if you want more stories, make sure you check out that one as well. Here comes today's Am I the A-hole? So I'm 28, my sister's 32, and we've never really gotten along. My parents were divorced, and so we never really spent much time together during our childhood. Once we got in our early 20s, though, that changed, and we actually did get pretty close. Both of us were in a serious relationship, and we would always talk about our dream weddings. Fast forward a few years, and my sister was finally getting married to her high school sweetheart. I've never seen her so happy, and I knew this was going to be one of the most cherished moments in life. That was until my dumbass of an ex-boyfriend proposed to me at my sister's wedding. Needless to say, I had absolutely no freaking clue. I rejected his proposal and ended up leaving him after a few weeks of him showing no signs of him being sorry at all. My sister, rightfully upset with both of us, because in her eyes, we'd just taken away her spotlight on a day she's been dreaming of for years. I felt so bad that I ended up giving her around half of what she paid for the wedding. A little much, I know, but when you have your whole family against you, you'll do anything to get them back to normal. It took a couple months, but our bond came back, and I ended up meeting my now fiancé. Our wedding's in a couple weeks, and my sister's been making jokes about announcing her pregnancy at my wedding. At first, the jokes were funny, and I thought they had no real threat to them. But after today, it was pretty clear she was not actually joking. My mom called me telling me that my sister said she was going to announce that she's pregnant during the speeches part of our wedding to get back at me for what I, quote, did during hers. I texted my sister saying that it was completely unfair to not just me, but especially to my fiancé, and neither of us were to blame for what my ex did. She won't hear me out, and I told her if she won't drop it, then she won't be allowed in the front door of the wedding. I guess she's been crying to all our brothers saying I'm a witch and a shitty sister for not only ruining her wedding, but for not letting her get a tiny bit of revenge. I get it. It must be hard for it to happen at her wedding, but how should it be at my fault? I did not tell him to do it, and now my fiancé definitely didn't either. My dad and brother said I was being petty and that it was only fair I let her do that considering what happened to her. My fiancé is on my side though, and thinks it's best I don't let her come, or at least not to the reception. I know it might not seem a bit unfair for me just to not let her get back to me, but I did not pay this $15,000 pity money just for her to ruin my wedding years later. We're both adults, and at this point, I think this could be overdramatic. A pregnancy announcement and a proposal are two very different things, but I won't lie, I say it wouldn't hurt my feelings if she did that to me. So, let's skip right to it. Here's the update. So today was my wedding, and I'm glad to announce that it went amazing. I don't have much drama to update you on since it's just been blocking people in my family who've been being mean to me about the situation. My husband and I ended up uninviting my sister, my father, and older brother. We felt it was more important to us to have fun in a non-stressful wedding, rather than try to please my sister and do so in a sort of compromise. I definitely got a ton of shit for it at first, since I could not exactly tell everyone in my family why they were uninvited. I did not want to ruin her moment again, laugh out loud. But when my sister announced her pregnancy a couple days ago, I could finally tell them my side, and pretty much everyone agreed with my decision. Sorry I didn't have like a super interesting update, but thanks guys for everything and the advice and stuff like that. It made me realize I in fact was not the a-hole and had every right to be upset. Drop your thoughts down below what you would have done in my shoes. Have a great day. I don't blame OP for uninviting sister. Actually, I say not the a-hole for the fact that OP did not even know she was going to get proposed to. And she gave $15,000 out of her kind heart just to fix their feelings. $15,000 is a lot of money for even a billionaire. Guys, let me know what you think of this story in the comment section down below. That's all the content I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed reading it. And as always, Mr. Reddito will be back tomorrow with even more stories.